AI is, everything is front and center around AI right now this year with, Chat GPT and um, those sorts of things. From an AI perspective, I think my view is it's always going to be the human touch is always going to be needed from an investing perspective.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Abdi Jama. I am a co-founder here at Investipal. If you've seen our previous episodes, it was Cameron Howe, my other co-founder. And today I am joined here by Matt Wilcox, who's got over 20 years in the retail banking and product space with one of the largest institutions in Canada. Matt, I'll let you kind of take it away and introduce yourself there.
Yeah, thanks, Abdi, and thanks for having me on the show today. Glad to be here. Yeah, like you mentioned, spent 20 years in the retail banking and investing space and product, working for Canada's leading online bank, Tangerine. Last year, I left to travel with my family, but also to start up my own consultancy, helping fintechs and banks deliver market-leading products that meet customer needs. We know the financial space is evolving, in particular with fintech, and feel like we're helping people launch products that are really meeting the needs of consumers as those are evolving to match with what they're seeing in other spaces, the Netflix and big tech kind of space that they're experiencing every day. Over those years, I've had the opportunity to speak directly to Canadians who were looking to take more control of their finances. It's a big area where when I moved into the investment space for the last 10 years, I was really focused on enabling, the average everyday Canadian to really take control of reaching their financial goals. And that's something that I'm looking to continue with the consulting work that I'm doing as well.
Very nice, very nice. So you said you were traveling a little bit. We don't need to veer too off out there and into the rest of the world. But what did you see anyone chatting in your time socializing? Was investing something that was common there, or do you find that there was barriers to entry into when it came to managing your wealth around the world?
Yeah, I spent about 5 months traveling through the US, and then some time traveling through Europe, and got to see, various states of kind of financial interest across that. Obviously, the US quite advanced and innovative in those areas, and people are well down the path of taking control of their own investments. And in Europe, I was mostly centered in Serbia, where my wife is from. And there you have a very different environment where, it's not something that really is talked about on a regular basis. Part of that is kind of economic environment there is a little bit different. And so it's not something that is top of mind. I think that is a place where, some of the digital tools that are becoming available can open up the availability of, more advanced and more sophisticated financial tools for those individuals. I did
Mhm.
also have the chance to travel to London and see one of the leading fintech ecosystems and join a conference there. So that was quite interesting as well. Um, but yeah, really just various levels of innovation happening in some of those spaces. It was very interesting to see the spectrum, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, in a place like London too, I think, that is one area that, a lot of finance professionals really drive to kind of meet and get together and have conferences and exchange ideas globally. So, I mean, we don't have to stay too long on that, but did you see anything, around the conference that might be different than what you kind of experienced here in Canada? Things that might they're thinking about that, Canada might not have yet?
It was interesting going into the conference. I was really looking forward to part of the segments that were more focused on the wealth and retail kind of savings environment where I was coming from. But where I actually got the most was some out of some of the other areas like lending, like payments, and so on, around how do you design something that meets or addresses a real customer pain point?
Hmm.
Um, how do you how do you build something that really solves that? How do you tell a story as a startup, if you will, or a founder who is trying to seek funding? How do you tell a story that is powerful and kind of helps understand that problem that you're trying to solve? Um, with the investing and retail banking, there was a lot that I was quite familiar with, but I'd say I got the most value out of the insights from some of the other areas where there's consistency of how do you solve those, how do you identify those problems, how do you solve those problems, and how do you tell a story around that. It was really interesting to me to see some of the themes there. I would say across the segments, the various segments, which really covered all across fintech.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I think, a lot of the big story that really, kicked me and my co-founder off to launching Investipal was the influx of information, retail investors would get before entering the market into different brokerage apps. And so we found that although everything was slowly becoming more and more accessible here over the years, entering the markets without the right tools by your side or just the right support or advice is dangerous. So I guess I think you mentioned in the past when we were chatting as well, you were a part of a panel. You did see a big retail investor wave. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what that panel or the research study that you were a part of was all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what you're touching on, I think, and something that over over 10 years where I was in the retail investing space was just the need for education in a really simple way and to simplify investing for the average person is a huge opportunity and something that, we did in my time. So I think that's something that you're speaking to. Uh, Flashing back to this was an Ontario Securities Commission initiative, basically, where they identified that 1 in 2 millennials were not investing. And that was primarily due to education and fear of losing money from an investments perspective. Were two of the key drivers in terms of why those individuals weren't investing. So basically there was a consulting effort that happened um, and a study with a group of millennials, and I was part of the industry panel who reviewed some of the insights and findings from that, and basically uh, incorporated some of those designs and principles and insights into what we were doing at Tangerine at the time, in order to really try and simplify things like identifying their own personal goals and attaching that to their investments and what they're trying to invest towards, but not prescribing that. Was one of the key ones that I think we brought to life at Tangerine with our investing product as well. So
Hmm.
that was a really interesting panel to be a part of, and I look around today and I see some of the uh, innovation that's happening, and not saying it was driven by this OSD study, but you can definitely see some of those things like play accounts where you can test out investing without actually putting any stake in the game. So those are a couple of um, the ones that I've seen, and in my time at Tangerine, I think we were one of the leaders in terms of bringing budgeting and spending tools, money management tools to Canadians so that they could really track what they were doing.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I know you touched on some really good points there. Education and fear was one of the biggest issues, or I guess barriers for people when it came to entering the market and starting to invest and looking into their future and retirement and so on. And part of that, what we've discovered ourselves was just a lack of assistance, which what provided us, or I guess what pushed us to create the portfolio assistant AI to help guide individuals around the investment universe when they are
Yeah.
exploring. And so, I guess, it's education. And so there's that aspect of things. And then there's another aspect where there's fear, there's a lack of tools. Now, if we step back, a little bit here, apart from technology, and we look at, in the history, traditionally, what I found, and maybe you might be able to speak to it or might know a little bit about it, but even with personal experience, you need to have, I find, to work with a professional advisor, different portfolio managers, wealth managers, you should have in and around $100,000 in investable assets to qualify to work with experienced individuals based off of the majority's criteria in the space. And so, you know, can you speak to what else that was provided by, or is provided in the industry for individuals that have less? What if you're a student that has 20K or, early 20s getting into the workspace? How can they do it safely? Or some of the products, I know robo advisors were really big over the last 5 years. What's out there for someone who doesn't have that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think flashback 10 years ago when um, I was beginning to run product at Tangerine, there wasn't really much out there at the time. There were some online brokerages in terms of fully digital investing processes. Tangerine was one of the first. Over the years, of course, robo-advisors have come out, and both Tangerine and robo-advisors have no minimum. So for anyone who wants to start out, you can do it with any amount you want. Um, and I think that's one of the things uh, that we really need to emphasize is just the it's more important to get started than to wait until you've got money. You just need to start. And creating tools that highlighted the value of starting early was one of the things that really helped some of the investors that we were working with do that and show how much the small amounts that you're investing can really add up. So, regular automatic savings programs or pre-authorized contributions, those sorts of things. Tools that actually show how those add up over time are really, really can demonstrate that to consumers and help them kind of take that first step, right? Where it's not a huge investment. And there's a number of places you can do that. Like I said, online brokerage is still around and still a place where maybe a bit more knowledge in terms of what products are out there are needed. But there's a lot of really simple one package solutions uh, that you can just get started filling out a simple questionnaire and start investing like Tangerine and some of the robo advisors.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's where things are headed, right? Making that aspect easier. When we think about the wealth tech
And
space, breaks down. Hey,
sorry, I
sorry.
was just going to say, and I think the tool that you guys have, allowing someone to kind of find something that maybe they like, and they can kind of match up with a portfolio that is kind of created, and they can execute that. I think that would be that's a cool starting point to really bridge that and help jump that initial hurdle. That's the biggest challenge. Once most people start, they're really sticky and they stick around. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we're seeing on the product side too. People that are just getting into our product, learning about it, and we're finding that they're getting stickier and stickier once they start to see other portfolios that, for example, they come into our solution and they can look up, Warren Buffett's you know, mock portfolio, and you can kind of see some of his holdings that Berkshire Hathaway might have, and start to play around yourself. And before you know it, it's like riding a bike, and these individuals are coming back in to check it and share it with their own family and friends. Beating, I think that social aspect of things is kind of fighting along the lines of lowering that barrier to entry when it comes to when individuals are able to share with their family and friends that don't necessarily speak the same language from another trusted individual. I think, a lot of the education aspect has to do with language barrier. First generation millennials is a big thing. Being such a multicultural country, uh, immigrants have a tough time entering the market. They're quicker to buy a house, start a business, raise a family than they are, investing in education that could also provide that extra source of income additional to what they've made in retirement. So that's one thing we found that you just touched on there makes a big difference is collaboration.
Yeah.
Now, Wealth Tech breaks out, right? We have budgeting, like you said, you spent some time in budgeting, saving tools. You spent some time in the retail investments, some of the brokerage, retail investing tools. But where I find really interested, and it's definitely not a space that we're playing, but it works hand in hand is financial planning, along the lines of budgeting and spending and saving. But
Mhm.
I find tools like conquest planning, other planning tools that are, surfacing, Chronify. And so, I mean, can you speak to that a little bit? Have you done some research when it comes to planning and how they're helping, retail investors or just Canadians and Americans in North America help get up to speed with this?
Yeah. So I think first off, wealth tech space, primarily, some of the technology you're seeing there is geared towards advisors,
Yeah.
and some of those, um, kind of RAs and those sorts of things. What I typically come at it from a, retail consumer, someone who doesn't have that, you touched on the 100,000 to get started with an advisor, is typically how I like to think about it. And I think uh, the what I'm most looking forward to is some of the partnerships that can happen to bring some of those advanced tools that would typically be available through an advisor to your average retail investor who has less than $100,000 to get started, but helps them get started. And we've seen some of that. You touched on Conquest. There was a partnership with RBC as well, and then a couple weeks later there was a partnership um, with Wealthsimple.
Well,
And so
simple,
that's
yeah.
just one example of those tools starting to become more available and make some of that more accessible. I think a lot of the banks have some of the money management tools, which aren't necessarily focused on um, investing specifically, but I think they're foundational to you need to have a budget first. You need to understand how much money you have left over to invest, and you need to prioritize those investments in terms of paying yourself first, and those traditional kind of best practices in getting started. So I think bringing some of those tools that were typically only available if you had an advisor to the average person and making them more accessible is what I look forward to the most in terms of the wealth tech space.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think this is a great segue into, the next, I think, and next and final thing I was hoping to cover today, is AI, right? I don't, and from where I stand and where I see things today, and maybe you see things a little bit differently, but I don't believe AI is here to take over the wealth tech space. I think that, AI is going to be able to help serve those who don't have the ability to have that guidance, starting out. That is costly, that some would pay a handsome amount for. And so, and we both, and like you said, we both understand that the best way for a lot of these tools to work is with when they're aligned, right? All the way up to when you become, a higher net worth individual, working with a team of professionals that are going to help you with that tax, that planning, that estate planning and wealth planning. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on how AI is, apart from that, how it's going to affect the space from a solution standpoint? Um,
yeah. I think from a digital perspective, I think there's a lot can happen with AI and machine learning from an insights perspective. Really understanding the investor and providing insight on how they invest. I don't think
mhm.
it will replace, um, uh, the human touch, if you will. But I think there's there's some really powerful tools that can really help um, from a digital perspective that are out there. So I think it's kind of still, I believe, a combination of technology and the digital experience with the human touch um, is really the way forward from an investment perspective. I think when you think back to some of the robo advisors, it was okay. Can you do it totally digital? And I think what you've seen is some of them have started to introduce maybe more so for clients with more money, but direct access to portfolio managers and advisors, in addition to obviously the online functionality that they have and the digital functionality they have. AI is, everything is front and center around AI right now this year with, Chat GPT and um, those sorts of things. From an AI perspective, I think my view is it's always going to be the human touch is always going to be needed from an investing perspective. What we saw with some of the robo advice, um, there was always a question of, is it going to be fully online? And I think what we've seen with some of the robo advisors is they started to introduce that kind of portfolio manager or someone you can speak to for a bit of that human touch. So I think that's really important. And I think what's really interesting, one thing that I found with the newsletter that I write every week, I did a segment on LinkedIn where they released an announcement that they were investing, I think it was $10 million to develop essentially an AI driven wealth coach.
Mm,
Um, and so really interesting and in the LinkedIn post that I did, really talked about what it is that a coach does, which is partially behavioral. So
mhm.
making sure that you identifying any behavioral gaps. Uh, Part of it is teaching and education, which we've touched on in this podcast, is really important in terms of getting started and knowing what to invest in and those sorts of things.
Your newsletter, I think, as founders, we're always trying to go as fast as possible, and we need that steady flow of information of what's happening in the space, what other people are up to, so that we can help try and narrow in and kind of make sure we're staying in a clear line and a clear path, and with still being educated in the space that we're playing in. So a lot of that can get carried away. Do you want to speak about your newsletter a little bit and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been writing a newsletter for about the past 15 weeks. Basically, every week I summarize some of the key stories from the previous week. It started out of um, an interest in, well, twofold. One, in the 20 years where I was in the investing space and running the business, I was really focused on running the business, and I was very aware of what was happening in Canada in particular. But I probably didn't spend enough time looking at what was happening outside of Canada and taking stock of what was happening away. So part of it was okay. Can I help share that with my network? So everyone's busy. Maybe they miss things over the course of the week. Well, this is somewhere they can go to get kind of a roundup, if you will, of what's happening from an innovation perspective. And I cover the spectrum from not just retail investing in wealth, but digital banking, open banking, payments. Uh, and then I think the second part of it for me was more of a learning kind of curve to see what's happening outside of the wealth space. So I've been doing it for 15 weeks now. Got a lot of, it's been a really good learning journey for myself. And I hope that everybody that's reading the newsletter gets a lot of value out of that every week. I try and, maybe people are only looking for certain areas, and I categorize it, and hopefully people can find what they're looking for pretty easily. But yeah, really, it's helped me in terms of understanding where the industry is going, and hopefully it's doing the same for yourself, like you said, as a founder. But even if you're in kind of a day-to-day role, um, that it's adding value.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what, I could be a testament to that. It does add value, and it is, what better person to trust to kind of get that brief of information in once a week, once every couple weeks, than someone who's been in the space for 20 years. So, Matt, thank you. And where can everyone find your newsletter?
Yeah, it's on LinkedIn, Matt Wilcox. Give me a follow and check out the newsletter. It would be awesome.
Amazing. Matt, pleasure to chat with you, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
All right. Thanks, Abby. Appreciate
Bye.
it.